On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I chat with Julie Williams, founder of Leaf People, a plant-based skincare company rooted in whole plant extracts, ethical sourcing, and small batch production. From growing up in rural Alaska to traveling the world studying botanical medicine, to learning directly from the plants themselves through meditation and traditional healing practices, Julie built her brand from a place of deep connection to the natural world. In this episode, we talk about what sustainability in beauty really looks like beyond the marketing, the realities of sourcing ethical botanicals, and what it takes to build a business that stays true to its mission for more than 20 years. If you've ever wondered what it means to create something that is truly plant-forward and purpose-driven, this conversation is for you. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stefanie LaHart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. All right. Now, you guys know there was a time before clean beauty became a trend, before all the green labels and sustainability claims filled every shelf, and when a few founders were quietly doing the work the right way. And guess what? Today's guest is one of those pioneers because I have the pleasure of speaking with Julie Williams, the founder of Leaf People. It is a brand that is rooted in whole plant extracts, ethical sourcing, and small batch production long before those ideas became industry buzzwords. Now, we're going to talk today about what sustainability in beauty really looks like beyond the marketing, the realities of sourcing ethical botanicals, and what it takes to build a mission-driven brand without compromising values. Now, we have had the pleasure of speaking to many entrepreneurs when they were in like the first 5 years of starting their business, so a lot of startup chatter. But Julie here has been running Leaf People now for 22 years. So she is just a wealth of information for us that, Julie, I don't even know if 45 minutes is going to be enough. We might have to do like a multi-show kind of thing. I don't know. But with that said, Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here.
I am excited as well. Like I said, we speak to so many entrepreneurs when they're in the beginning stages, and there's all these buzzwords now, and it seems very easy, like hello ChatGPT, which is saying, I want to start a natural beauty business. Tell me how to do it. And I think a lot of people are just going to fall for that, let's say, checklist, the business checklist that they think is going to help them get on their way. But you started this business before ChatGPT. Before we could Google these things. And I'm as old as you, Julie, so I understand these because I have started businesses from back in the day before it was a checklist. So talk to me a little bit about what were you doing in the first iteration of your life and career before you got into natural skincare?
Well, before skincare, so I graduated college. I was working in restaurants and bartending as a way to pay for college. So I did that a little bit after college. And then my big dream post-college was to go on a trip around the world and just try to live in various places around the world. And so in doing that, that's where I got introduced to botanical medicine. And I kind of made that a theme of my trip. And then I did, odd jobs along the way. I worked on yachts. I worked in restaurants. I did just various jobs, in different countries, and, it helped pay for my education. in different parts of the world. And then when I came back from that, that was 3.5 years. And when I came back from that, I went to a really fantastic healing arts school. And so then I was introduced there to Western herbalism here in the United States through that school. And of course, we learned massage and different types of energy work and teaching yoga and Qigong, all those types of things as well. And so I was in that wellness field before developing Leaf People.
And you have a really interesting, I think, just backstory too, because you actually grew up in rural Alaska, and traveled the world quite extensively. So, I think what were you seeing in the world that kind of started formulating this idea in your mind that we need to approach skincare differently here in the U.S.
Well, I think it kind of was more than just approaching skincare. It was more about like just approaching the natural world. I grew up in Alaska in very rural seaside communities, so a lot of interaction with the forest, with native plants and animals. And my mom was very good about like teaching me the native plants and what they were used for, and cultivating and harvesting different things. And when I was on the trip around the world, one of my first stops was Sydney, Australia, and I met a naturopath there. A friend of mine was just finishing her education in naturopathy. And so she used me as kind of one of her case studies for, herbal treatments. And that was the first time I realized, like, wow, this could be an actual career. You can actually study this and do something with it, and so on. And so that was really more of the spark. And then as I traveled and lived in different areas, I lived in near the Amazon and a lot of these are very plants intense areas around the globe, and started working with natural healers and different spiritual people who are teaching me how to communicate with the plants and really meditate with the plants. And so the skincare and skin thing kind of came out of really just trying to connect with the botanical world. And in doing that, their message was like, we need a conduit, a vector to really get more in touch with humanity. And so that process, ended up developing as the skincare. Like the skincare is the vector to bring the message, the energy, the nutrients from the plants, to the people. And that's kind of where the name is, to like Leaf People. It's bringing those two things together as one.
Right, right, and that makes perfect sense. And and for people that don't know this, like your skin is actually the biggest organ of your body. So there's so much that the skin does for us. Not only do we get sensations and feelings through it, but it's like we actually interpret the world through our skin. So it's incredibly important how we treat it and how we care for it, and what we use on our bodies. But again, back, so you started this company 20 years ago. Research that you did was in the library or from meeting people and learning through, actually, going to school or having teachers and stuff like that. I kind of laugh and make a joke at it now that anybody can start a business online. But, what were you seeing then back when you were first formulating this idea for this potential business? Like, how did you approach that? And what was the first products that you decided to start developing?
So in the beginning, I have to kind of unwind my mind since it was so long ago. But yeah, in the beginning, so I was a very serious meditation practitioner back then. And so I did a lot of my like initial thought process in meditation, in that just, really allowing that expansiveness and allowing the connection to the natural world to sort of bring in the ideas. And then I would kind of take that concept and lay it over my medicine education, because in botanical medicine school back then it was a very focus on just mostly internal herbal remedies, for balancing the body, healing the body. Any topical applications that we did they were very effective, but the formulas were very rudimentary, so they weren't made for their aesthetic value. They were made for their effectiveness. And so there were these gaps. So I kind of had to take my education that I had in botanical medicine, take the like thoughts and messages I was getting from meditation as to what plants wanted to be in the formulas, then, research and educate myself is like how to lay all this into like a really good serum or a really nice cream, something that smells wonderful, gives the great results that you want, that has good absorption rates, that's going to have the right results. And so it was definitely like pieces of a puzzle coming together. So it did include a lot of various styles, my direct education, doing additional research, sitting in harmony, I guess, with plants and trying to listen to those messages. There are a lot of different aspects to that process. And you're totally right. I mean, I don't even think I had a cell phone back then. Like, this was not easily researched online, or, you couldn't just tap in a question and get an answer. You had to really like search in other ways to find those solutions.
Yeah, it was definitely we were all Indiana Jones back then, just digging our way through archaeological finds of like, how would I go about doing this? So, it's very interesting with your background though that I mean, you are obviously so well traveled and growing up in Alaska, I think you had more of a connection to the natural world than maybe somebody, growing up in a city like I did. I grew up in Philadelphia. I like to tell people I never even saw a cow till I was 20 years old. But, when you decided like you wanted to get into this realm of creating botanical skincare, what was your next step then? Because again, you had to figure all this stuff out. So how did you go about creating your first product and what was it?
So fortunately, part of my kind of my like a graduate project at school, we had choices of what we could do with our herbal school to be like our final project. And so I chose to build a botanical pharmacy. So I spent a big part of my schooling like making all these tinctures and these formulas and all of this stuff, because that was like my final project to get my certificate. And so I had some experience in compounding. Everything was for internal, but I had some experience in compounding. And then after I finished school, I I did study privately under a master herbalist she was my mentor for about 20 years, and she started a skincare line as well. So I had some help from her in terms of doing different styles of extractions for topical use. And my first product, I think my first lineup was um, a like a scrub from dried botanicals that you would activate with aloe vera and honey, toner, a hydrating mist, but the toner was with botanical extracts and essential oils. The hydrating mist was with essential oils and like aloe vera. I did a face serum and like a body serum, sort of a little bit more simple things like that, but very highly extracted, very potent. And in fact, our Transform Face Serum, which we still is a flagship product in our line today, is one of those original products from 22 years ago. And it's been loved for that amount of time. It's one of our most popular products.
That's incredible. So, clearly you saw that, this could be something that people would be able to use for the longevity of their life. I'm sure you have many customers that have probably been using it for 22 years. So, when you were getting into the process of like, you knew the formulations you wanted to make, how were you able then to connect with either the chemist or the sources to make it? Because the difference with your products is you're really into using whole plant extracts. So how did that all come together? How were you able to create these products?
Yeah, so this is what I do is very, very different from cosmetic chemistry, which is like the common type of education that people will get to go into this field. And so I'm coming at this from an herbalist perspective, which is really plants as medicine, seeing like the whole person like as a whole unit. And so you're um, making products to help with the skin, but also kind of like harmonize their energy, uplift their psyche. So we use components of essential oils and different plants to affect all of those things. So starting the company and the products, there was a lot of research on the different ingredients. And what was one thing that was really important to me was like sustainability over time. So I really researched all of the ingredients to make sure Nothing was at risk of being endangered, or they also have at risk lists, like at risk of being in risk. And so I did like meticulous research on all these plants. Where do they grow? What's their habitats like? What habitats are being encroached on, so that I could really choose botanicals that would have a nice impact on the skin, but that also we wouldn't run into any sustainability issues with. And then I also worked with a wonderful team of estheticians at the Aspen Club in Aspen, Colorado. So I would compound my formulas and test things, and then I would give them to review, to use on clients in the treatment room. And then they would come back to me and be like, yes, this, smelled great, but, we need a little bit more of this action or that action, or it worked perfectly, but it didn't smell great. Could go either way. And, so they would give me feedback, and then I would go back to, and I did start this at home in my kitchen, go back to my kitchen and keep tweaking things and, bring them more stuff. So I had a really wonderful professional team that gave me fantastic feedback, that really helped fine tune the line. And it also gave us a great treatment space, to see how it worked on the skin. The other thing that I did that I think was really key is that I got into our local Aspen Farmers Market immediately. And so every season I was on the street with my stuff, face to face with people, and let me tell you, they will come back and tell you exactly what they think, you know, good, bad, or otherwise. And so I had this like, constant feedback of, what type of products do they want. This is where a lot of how our product line expanded, because it's like, oh my gosh, I love this, this, and this, but I really need an eye serum, or really need something for my lips, or what about the rest of the body? And so that's partially how the line grew, was also getting feedback from our customers. But one of the things I did was really like put myself into a direct connection to who's using the product, so that I could see, real results in real time. And then a lot of research and fine tuning, like make a formula, research, make the formula, test it, fine tune, make it again, test it, fine tune, like always going through these steps, with people who I knew and trusted would give me honest opinions, not just tell me it's great, but like give me that were educated in the field, who could give me really good feedback.
That's the perfect combination. You had professionals that you were working with on one side, these estheticians, and then be able to get that real world feedback from people just in the farmers markets. I mean, kind of just the perfect mix right there of launching a business like this. So, even 20 years ago, it's funny because we've had so many entrepreneurs now that they do get their launch in a farmers market and they say the same thing. It's like getting that immediate feedback tells you what people actually need or want or are looking for, and then you could see how your products are used, because sometimes we create things and then launch them into the world and people use them in a whole different way. You're like, I didn't really think of that. Okay, I can see that. So, when you were going then along your journey there, so you went to school, but then when you launched this, when did the turning point come for you that you're like, I think this is going to be a business that I'm really going to go all in? Or were you all in from the beginning?
I was pretty all in from the beginning. I mean, I'd put myself through herbal medicine school, and um, kind of the two avenues. The avenue they mostly train you for is like clinical, seeing people clinically, which I didn't want to do. I had to do a year-long internship with a clinical herbalist in order to finish that side of the training. And we didn't have any herbalists in the valley where I lived, which meant I would have had to do that, move back. So that wasn't really an option for me. So manufacturing was really the route. And so, and there's a lot of upfront expenses with manufacturing, going through the whole formulation period, or buying ingredients and bottles and making labels, and you got to have something to sell and test and present to people. So it was pretty early on, but I would say definitely by year 2 or year 3, it was like I gotta either hit the gas and go for this all in, or give up now, because you're investing so much money into, yeah, manufacturing, just the basics of manufacturing, that you have to make that decision pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So, that makes so much sense too. So, I'm really wondering then is like, since you did start this 20 years ago, I really feel like we were still in the age of, we would I think just absorb what marketing told us. And I think we're now more in the age where people, because of social media, people have more discussions about, well, what is this actually mean, or what is out there, or why would I use this? Like, I think the consumers drive a lot more of the conversation than maybe back in the day. So when you were starting out and along your journey then, how have you been able to educate your customers? Like, what is the difference with leaf people? Because now we do have a very full space in the skincare market. And there's a lot of buzzwords we use with sustainability and all natural and things like that. So how are you able to really hold your brand kind of above that to show people what is the difference between, your skincare line over another, considering that, your formulation is so heavily centered on these botanical extracts to really be, like, I think, the secret ingredient for the difference, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the botanicals are definitely a key part, and I think part of it, or I mean, really all of it, I think, is just I have always stayed very true to my mission. My mission is to be in service to the plants. My mission is to bring education, information, experience, healing, whatever it is from the plant world into our physical reality as human beings. And so over time, like earlier in the process, a lot of my time was just spent kind of educating people about the botanicals I was using. Like, we use ashwagandha, we use ginkgo and reishi mushroom and burdock root, and these different things. And so most of my clients are just like, I don't even know how to pronounce this. Like, what is this? And then after about, I'd say 8 to 10 years into the business, people would be like, "Oh my gosh, that has ashwagandha in it. I take ashwagandha every day," and they were starting to make those connections, and they were starting to use those plants in other ways. And then fast forward to now, where yes, the space is very crowded, but we are still, I make this stuff still in my own private lab. I work from the plants forward. I make all of my own extractions. I do Reiki energy work on all of the products, on the ingredients. I do other styles of energy work on the products and the ingredients um, to just preserve their vibrational fields. We have our whole lab and business and everything blessed by Buddhist monks every year. um, we integrate some of these other traditional medicine systems that are important in herbalism, and we keep those alive in our practice and in our manufacturing. So it's not some cream that's coming out of some gigantic kettle that makes 20,000 gallons of cream at a time in some factory that's on the outskirts of some city that, is being made by people who are, just there to do their job, to do what they to manufacture in that way, but maybe don't have a connection to botanical medicine or necessarily wellness. Maybe they're just more into it because of the formulation and manufacturing side that interests them. Supply streams, things like that. Like, there's a lot of different calls into manufacturing. So I think my differentiating factor is really to just stay tuned in to the energy of the plants, their properties, their medicinal benefits, keep that key, keep that present, keep that forward. And a lot of times I kind of explain it to people as, leaf people is more like dining in a Michelin star restaurant versus, a different lotion maybe that a million units a year sell that's being made in a large factory might be more like a chain restaurant, like that. Those are kind of the nuances. You're getting something that is still made by people who are trained to make these products from plants specifically, and you're getting that in the bottle. You're getting that from the plant source through the extraction, through the blending, through the final stages of production into the bottle. and that really makes it different.
I love what you said about being plant forward. I think that's such a beautiful way to put it. I'm such a huge plant person myself. I have a gigantic garden, and I'm that person too that I'm like, yeah, it's like, you look around the natural world and it's like we need to honor this more, really think about what we're doing. And the animals also are very happy about it because I know your products are also vegan and cruelty free, which is the only products I'm looking for at this point in my life. I just don't see a need to use anything else, especially with all of the developments and what we know now. It's like there's just no need for any of that. You made a comment earlier that I have to ask you about doing Reiki blessings on the actual ingredients and in the production. So what does that look like?
So, yeah, I do meditation practice every morning myself before I go into work, and open what I call my channel, the energy channel. And then, depending what I'm making, sometimes I'll put in a little bit more of like a healing energy. Like we have some formulas for lymphatic flow, for instance, or that are geared more towards like helping the skin recover from being really stressed, things like that. So I might do more of a healing flow, energy flow into that. All the energy comes out through my hands. Um, Sometimes I'll make it like for some of our, I'm not supposed to say these words, but like our anti-aging type formulas or things with stem cells that are really to kind of bring out that youthful glow in the skin or help with the skin regenerating. I might do more of a strengthening style healing energy into it. And so it's, yeah, the Reiki energy that I put in is for enhancements like that. There's also a lot of energy as well as within the formulations to enhance the communication between the ingredients. And this is something that is taught in herbal medical school that you don't usually get at all if you use ChatGPT or Google. But there's aspects of formulation where you want the formula to be balanced, both in its energetics, but then also like in its hierarchy and how the different plants communicate to each other. And so when I formulate the different botanicals in the formula, there's always some plants that are just specifically to help the different botanicals communicate with each other and figure out their hierarchy. So these are the stars of the formula. These are the supporting botanicals of the formula, and these are the botanicals that help everybody you know, fall into their position. And so there's also a lot of energy work around that too, that there is cohesiveness, coherence within the formula, that the blending is harmonious and strong and can be easily absorbed by the person using it in the right amounts to the right layers of the skin, things like that.
That is so important, especially when we hear now when people have like these 12-step skincare routines and things like that. I'm like, I think we're going overboard with that. So I like that you're actually within the formulation thinking of how botanicals are working with each other. And I like how you just put it with the hierarchy. I've never heard it described like that before. And that's so perfect to really think about it that way. Also, really love that you do not use the term anti aging because I also don't use that. I'm 55 years old. I'm not trying to anti-age. I'm just trying to be support my skin as it naturally ages as I move towards the natural progression, which will be my eventual passing. Like I'm not trying to anti anything. And it's funny because like we use terms like that, but when I ask my friends who are also of my age range, like, okay, if you had a, genie in a bottle right now, and you could say, they gave you like the option, like you can go back to being 21 years old, but you don't get to take your knowledge with you. Would you go back? And everybody says, absolutely not. I said, yes, but you'll have a tight ass and a tight face. They said, absolutely not. So for younger people that are listening to this out there, trust me, the wisdom that you gain over the years is well worth the crow's feet as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, or the
Um,
gray hair. Like I tell people, like I earned this,
love
like,
it. I
you know.
love it. We are speaking the same language, Julie. It's like not anti anything. It's all supportive. So, at the level you're at now, so you have weathered the journey of the startup, figuring out how to do this, setting up your own. You said you have a private lab and everything now. What does your team and your business building look like now? You're obviously available online. You have a website, but are you also doing any brick and mortar integrations? How are people finding you?
We are in different shops and locations, so you can carry us as a retail product in your brick and mortar shop. We work with apothecaries, and we're in some different wellness studios, chiropractors, and acupuncturists, things like that, as well as just stores, that just sell product and don't offer services. Um, and I think, for growth now, it's like I'm now on the education train again of, utilizing the different social media platforms and utilizing AI and kind of figuring out how to navigate that space because you have to kind of constantly you got to stay with not stay with the trends because I've always been very much like this is what we're doing and people can either they can love it or not love it, but this is what we're doing. But you have to stay like on the trend in terms of how this information is presented to the world, you know. So through I'm just recording a podcast now that's going to launch in the next few weeks, and then we've got our social channels and website, but there's a lot of like now the dinosaur is having to stay educated with how information moves in modern times because it's very, very different from when I started.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if you're a dinosaur, then girl, what am I? I mean,
No, we love ice cream.
pre-monolithic, I don't know. But are you finding then, okay, because I am a social media marketer. I love social media. I
Mhm.
do see the ups and downsides of it, but for the most part, I'm very pro social media. I think it's opened up the world in ways that we couldn't have imagined. But also because there is so much information out there all the time. Are you finding that within your education that you're doing, that you're having to really, I don't want to say like help people unlearn certain things, but maybe re-educate people with the real information because bad information can now be passed so quickly. Are you finding that sometimes you're hearing stuff within like the skincare and beauty sphere where they're talking about certain formulations or botanicals, and you're like, that is not how any of that works? Are you finding that you have to be almost the voice of reason sometimes?
I see that sometimes, it's not a lot lately, but there have over the span of doing this business, there have been sometimes some botanical studies that were not very well done or that later got debunked, things like that, that put some misinformation out into the world and people only caught like a piece of it. So then they're like, I'm totally anti this or totally anti that, because, they kind of saw a piece of some information that was not well done. I mean, not all studies are good, or analyzed well. And so we have seen that from time to time. One thing I've noticed in the past is that they don't always differentiate between a study, say on a certain plant, if it's the essential oil, the fragrance, like the plant itself, what part of the plant. So sometimes there's just not enough information to really assess, but whoever is putting the information out there is making an assessment. And so therefore, the assessment may not be totally accurate because we don't know like where the source information came from. That's happened with lavender before. I've seen, articles written about lavender essential oil versus lavender essence versus lavender fragrance, and you're dealing with very, very different things. But it all just gets grouped as lavender. And so I've seen more of that. And I think nowadays, mostly the questions in that realm I get are more like in the steps, like, do I really need a serum? Do I really need to exfoliate? And so it's more of those types of questions, which, we can easily like what I like to do with our customers is like, how many steps do you want to do? Like, how you like it simple? Do you like it complicated, or thorough? And then we just sort of target in like, this is what's going to get you the results in the amount of time that you want to spend. Because some of our customers really love, I mean, they love going through the whole regime and the washing and the toning and misting and eyes and lips and face. And, like that's part of their self-care. That's part of their personal time. That's part of their own, like, that's their space to just really hone in on themselves. Where others are like, 2 minutes in the bathroom, I need to be bang, bang, and out the door. So I get more questions like on that, on the regime, like how many steps should they be doing? What's really necessary? And so our goal is just to really, yeah, pick what's best for you in terms of those steps and what fits into your lifestyle and what you want to do. Because if you're not doing them, it's not going to work. That's the main thing. Whether it's 2 steps or 5 steps, you have to actually be into and want to do it.
That's such a perfect way to put it. I am definitely one of those kind of grab it and go girls, like anything more than a minute in the bathroom, I'm like, this is too much time. Also I'm a runner, so I always feel like I'm sweating at some points. I'm like, what am I going to do? Do this whole beauty regime? I go out and I sweat, and now I've got to do it again. Like, how does all this work in? But I like that you've laid it out that people kind of choose their own adventure, how much they want to approach it, which is really super important. And speaking of approaching, then, as far as like, what's going on in the world and business today, what's been one of the challenges you've had as far as like really being able to continually source your ethical botanicals, which is so important to the Leaf People brand? Like, have you found challenges along the way, like in the last now 5 years, as far as like getting the correct ingredients you need? Or do you think it's easier because we are so connected at this point?
No, I would say supply chain issues have been and are real. Since 5, 6 years ago. Prior to that, I could get anything I wanted pretty much at any time I wanted and not a problem. And I've had to really shift um how much I buy, how much stuff we keep on hand, really, always be kind of checking in. Is there going to be a potential out of stock? Not so much because there's a shortage, but it's just because the supply chain to me gets lengthened, the supply chain to them gets lengthened. Like it's more of this just sort of lengthening of things actually happening that in the past seemed to happen faster. Fortunately, I'm a huge like loyalist and I've got great relationships with my vendors, and most of them I've worked with since I began this company 22 years ago. So I can be like, "Hey, Serge, how is this looking? Because I need to order in the next couple of months." And they'll let me know, and I can make adjustments. But there's a lot more time and effort that goes into keeping things in stock and available. And I think it is just more to do with the movement of these items around the country, around the globe, etc.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes I feel like, we feel so connected in some ways, and then other ways we're still like, how is it so hard to get certain things that we need? We've almost been trained that everything should be delivered overnight. I mean, I know I'm that girl. I try not to be, but I am. But here's a question I love to ask my founders that are in this, what we call like, the self-care, skincare regime, or not regime, but sector, because we just talked briefly about like what is like the steps look like how many products do you need, what do you want your routine to look like? If there were one product, one product that you were like, you really need to use this every day, what would that be?
It would be a face serum. Something like the Transform serum that I mentioned earlier is our flagship, but and preferably probably an oil activated serum. So we have oil activated serums and water activated serums. If you were going to use one, I would use an oil activated serum. And that's going to give you the widest arrangement of nutrients, antioxidants, fat soluble vitamins, essential fatty acids, different botanical properties that will help brighten the skin, even the skin tone, maintain elasticity, things like that. I describe them as liquid multivitamins for the skin. So regardless of whatever else you're using, just at least get a layer of that on. and you'll be doing huge benefits for your skin. You'll see a difference, and then you can kind of do whatever else you need to do, whether it's simple or complex, but at least have a really good high quality, plant extracted with essential oils type serum, um, getting that on every day, morning and night.
Fantastic. I will be immediately going to your website after we hang up and buying that product because, like I said, I am the grab and go girl. I want one product that's going to do it all and at least set me up for success. So, with that said, please tell us where, for our listening audience, where can they find you online to try these amazing products?
So our web store is leafpeople.com. And down at the bottom of the homepage, there's a place to sign up for a newsletter. We don't send out a ton of them, but you'll get a little discount code when you do sign up. And then you'll also be notified of like when a new podcast comes out or a new blog or if we have a sale, things like that.
Fantastic. And you are very active on your social medias too, so people can go and connect with you there, which I think is so important. I love the educational videos that you guys were doing, explaining certain things within the skincare industry. That's so important. And I love that you're doing that to really, help us along our way. Because again, it's like so much information, misinformation, good information. Who knows anymore at this point? But I tend to believe people like you that have been doing this for as long as you have, because I'm like, you know what? She really did the work. She did the research, as we like to say. So, with that said, Julie, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been so fun to hear about your story and to, see what's available to us out there.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And we do have some great tutorials on YouTube, so you can find us there. And then the Instagram is Leaf People Skincare, and there's some video tutorials there too. But we really appreciate being on the show. This was a wonderful opportunity. So thank you so much.
Also, I want to just mention you had mentioned earlier about doing a podcast. So, are you launching your own podcast as well?
I am launching my own podcast as well. It's called Voices of the Plants, a Leaf People podcast. And I'm opening my Akashic records and the Akashic records of particular plants. And your Akashic records, there's another type of like energy feed that you can access. So I open my Akashic records and the Akashic records of chamomile and then just ask questions, like, what's your purpose here? What are some of your energetic properties? What are your affinities, here on earth or with people, things like that. And the purpose is to really get at some different information that you're not going to find online or through ChatGPT or through a book, like kind of open up that access of actually having a conversation with a plant and what is its message and bring that out.
Oh, I am in. Julie, I am in. I totally want to have a conversation with the plant. I will make sure that everything is linked in our show notes and the descriptions and the blog for this episode so people can find your website online. They can find your podcast. I know I will be listening, and I just can't wait to see what is in store for Leaf People as we move forward. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was a joy talking to you.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thanks for listening to the Wow Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.